So, our special guest today, you know him, you love him. I don't think he deserves an introduction if you're watching the video, but if you're listening at home, I have the current Secretary of Education, Mr. Miguel Cardona. Secretary Cardona, how are you?
Good, good. Great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. I got to give you mad props from the beginning for even considering doing a podcast for teachers. It seems like, the big ABC News and everything like that, I'm sure they're always calling, but to jump on a podcast, it means a lot, especially to me and obviously the teachers
Yeah.
that want to hear from you.
Devin, I'm happy to be with you. I got a little nervous though when you said the current secretary. I'm like, do you know something I don't know? Is there something that I should be checking my email? Happy to be the Secretary of Education. Happy to be serving at this time.
Yeah, it takes a lot for me to put on a tie. Still not wearing pants, but that's beside the point. It's Zoom. It's Zoom. No, it's great to have you. So, obviously our listeners need to verify that it's actually you. So just throw out a nuclear code and we'll get started. I'm just kidding. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. I've seen Designated Survivor though. They give you one. They got to give you one, right? It's kind of a
I have something in my wallet. Yeah.
something. Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's great to have you. Now, obviously, education has been a massive topic in the news today, and I speak to a lot of teachers. I was a teacher myself for 13 years, and there was a lot of optimism coming in with this current administration, with Jill Biden, with yourself, the experience that we have behind education, and there seems to be a lot of negativity in the news. What is being done at the Department of Education to kind of combat the recent accusations, things like, we're seeing grooming being thrown around, indoctrination. These are big, serious terms.
It's wild, right? How, first of all, I want to tip my hat to these teachers, like what they've gone through in the last 2 years, from overnight having to be experts in Zoom and trying to meet the students where they are, given everything that was going on in the homes of the families and in their own homes. We get amnesia quick, right? In this country, we owe so much to our educators who over the last 2 years have kept our kids focused. And I'm not just talking about academics. But look, I think I had a conversation with Dr. Jha the other day. He's the new COVID coordinator at the White House. And we were saying, we believe everybody's dealing with trauma from the pandemic. Everybody's angry. I mean, we have more angst in our board meetings, in our airports, even at the Oscars. Like, people are just pent up, right? And the beautiful thing about schools is that schools are a place where people come together and there's unity. In this last year, more than $17 billion in loan forgiveness, $130 billion going toward education. Yet the narrative that people are thinking about is how politics has gotten into education and is trying to divide. My suggestion is, as educators, we need to control that narrative. We need to talk about what's happening in our schools, how our students are better now than they were last year, but they still need more, right? So part of it is there are people whose job it is to create division because they get political points. We got to stand above that.
Right. To counter that, though, don't you think that's kind of adding another thing onto the teacher's plate? Because it seems like we're being asked, obviously in excess of covering shortages that are in the classroom. We've got, obviously we're dealing with the outside influence of what's going on. It seems like parents are even on edge. Like you said, everybody's kind of upset. Everybody's mad. There's a trauma that we're going through. Mm-hmm. And to have to deal with a national narrative that seems to be coming from news organizations, it seems like it's just a lot. A lot of teachers are breaking.
It's a lot. But I guess that's why, for me, it's really important that we celebrate what teachers are doing, and not just during Teacher Appreciation Week. Earlier this week, I had an opportunity to sit with the teachers of the year that represent every state. And, the first thing I said to them when we were in the White House, we had a meeting, I said, you belong here. You belong here. What you've done, you're the emotional first responders of our country. We're proud of you. We need to lift. And when I say we, I mean just education in general. We need to lift the great work that's happening in our classrooms and acknowledge our educators for what they've been doing. And I think that's everyone's job, right? But I hear you about, teachers have been being asked to do more with less since I got into the profession in the 1900s. Mm-hmm. We got to do better. We got to change that. And, the president gets it. Half of Congress gets it because half of Congress voted for the American Rescue Plan. But we have money now in education that we didn't have before. We need to do better making sure we're caring for our educators if we expect them to care for our students.
Do you think some of that money needs to go to kind of creating our own narrative from the top down, pushing the positivity? Do you think that some money, I mean, it almost sounds crazy, but do you think we need to market ourselves as teachers to push back, like you said?
Without question, we need to share our story.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing at the Department of Education, I visited 32 states in 1 year. The deputy secretary is out there in the road too, lifting up great stories of what's happening. And I mean, they don't sell as well on national news as the problem. But for me, it's like, no, we have a story to tell about how this let's remember a year and 3 months ago, over 50% of our schools were closed. We still didn't have vaccines out. Teachers didn't have vaccines available to them. A lot has been done. And we need to share our story. I do believe we need to have a kind of like a mindset of, no, I am helping children. We are worth praising, and we should be celebrating our success. I know educators, they're problem solvers. They want to solve the next problem, but celebrate the success you had. And then we as education leaders need to lift up those examples to make sure that teachers are getting the respect that they deserve. And that they, especially these last 2 years, what they've done is nothing short of amazing for this country.
Right. Now, I'm in Florida. Maybe you've heard of us. We're doing some crazy stuff down here, and it seems like it's actually making it kind of worked its way from mainstream news things, talk into actual enacted legislation and action where we pulled books. The county that I taught in actually physically was pulling books off the shelves because of what they deemed homosexual, basically propaganda is what they were saying. Now, what are we doing to combat those legislative actions that are being taken in states like Florida and seem to be spreading? It seems like once it's passed one state, it's gone to another state. They get that idea in their head. Oh, it can pass. All right, let's do it. What are we doing to protect, the LGBTQ community and also the free education that we have?
I visited Florida recently. I actually went.
I'm sorry.
No, listen. I have family members who are educators in Florida, and I love them, and their work is so important. I visited on the Transgender Day of Visibility intentionally, and I talked to students, and I talked to parents, and I talked to educators, and it was good for me to visit Florida to know that there's so many people that are giving students inclusive environments to learn. So while I know it makes the headline, I know that there's so many dedicated educators that are doing the right thing over there, and so many dedicated leaders that are doing the right thing over there. What we're doing at the Department of Education is making sure we're really proactive around messaging of inclusivity. And that's why I was there on that day, making sure that we're very clear in our guidance and how American Rescue Plan funds are being used, that we're against discrimination. I mean, the Title IX regulations are coming out soon. The Office for Civil Rights is available to make sure that any concerns around civil rights being violated are heard. And we're working, behind the scenes. We're having conversations with our colleagues, state legislators, governors, to make sure that they're understanding very clearly what our perspective is and what we're going to be looking for. It's unbelievable, but it's my thinking is it has to be top down, but it has to be bottom up too. We have to meet in the middle. We need to make sure that our student voices are activated. Students want inclusivity. Students want to know that they can learn about the diverse history of our country.
I feel like there's a disconnect, though, sometimes from the students and the parents, because I feel you on that comment that you said that the students want the inclusivity. And I get that. But I've had students that are in my class that have, one persona they have in their life with their friends and at school, and then a different persona with the parents because of the feelings that the parents have towards things like homosexuality. And so, that's kind of a difficult one to say that the students, need to
But
champion their
yeah, I hear you.
ability. Yeah.
But poll after poll will tell you that the majority of the parents are supportive of what's happening in our schools. We have to engage our families, all families, and it's okay to listen to those folks who disagree with us. I mean, that's the beauty of this country, but we have to do it in a way where we're listening to all perspectives. And as I said before, the overwhelming majority of families support their teachers, support their local schools. We have to continue to engage them in ways where their voices are heard as well.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this question is kind of a personal thing, and I really want you to address this one because this is something that means a lot to me. So I taught in Title I schools for my entire teaching career, 13 years. My kids, went to school in a very poverty-ridden area, high rates of minorities in the schools, and my kids themselves are minorities, and so to be in that system for so long, I kind of, I guess, internalized a lot of the problems that we were having there. And then recently, last year, we moved outside of the district into a different area. And the area that we're in now has more money. And generally, the area is wealthier. And the kids went to a different school that is not Title I and that is predominantly white. Now, I volunteered at that school, and let me tell you right now, there is a massive difference between that school and all the schools that I've ever been a part of in a poverty-ridden area. And it is so much so that I almost, sorry, I get choked up thinking about it. I worry about the kids, that are in these poverty-ridden schools and their future, compared to what money is giving these other kids. And I feel like we're leaving them behind, we're really doing them a disservice to these children that are unaware of how disadvantaged they are and how little they're given. And they're just really given a really hard start at life. And I just think it's so, and I didn't even realize as much how big that gap was. And I just think that it's so unjust what we're doing to the children. I mean, how do we justify these schools that don't have the money, don't have the resources, and we just go, okay, that's fine. But the wealthy, the wealthy have the iPads. And I mean, my kids saw technology they'd never seen before in their life. And the resources that these teachers had blew my mind. And I thought to myself, money was literally the only thing that kept these kids back. And what do you say to that? How do you combat?
Yeah, two things, Devin. And I appreciate your passion. This is why we do what we do as educators, right? To level the playing field. So number one, what I'm doing as Secretary of Education, yesterday I spent 2.5 hours sitting in front of the Appropriations Committee fighting for more funding for our Title I schools to level the playing field, to address achievement disparities, to ensure that every child in America has access to the American dream. So if you look at our budget, if you look at what the president's talking about, it's really to make sure we're leveling the playing field. So those experiences that you talk about so passionately, we can address that, okay? Mm-hmm. That's one of the things we're doing through funding, but also through policy. We're ensuring that the grants that we put out must have a lens of equity, or else we're not looking at it. Right. How are we making sure we're addressing inequities in our country? That has to be a lens that we look at for every decision. That's number one. Number two, I'm sharing the message, Devin, as a person that grew up in poverty, who went to a Title I school, who chose to keep his children in those schools. The school district where my children attend has a poverty rate of over 75%. Mm-hmm. I choose because there's some benefit. I got grit. I was able to learn. Listen, I was able to reopen schools because of the relationships that I made when I was in high school with people that were different than me. And I had to learn how to navigate that space. Those skills that I learned there were necessary for me to ever make it to Secretary of Education. So what I say is those students they're getting those skills that they need to be successful in life. And you know what? The resources aren't equal, but we know that there are diamonds in there. Mm-hmm. And we need to look at what they do get and the experiences they get, the lived experiences also as prerequisites to their success in life. I'm a proud, and I said this to the appropriations team yesterday, I'm a product of the budget that I'm fighting for. Right. Title I school, I went into teaching, bilingual education. So for those students that are in those communities, it's frustrating, the gaps in access. But what I want to say to those kids and those teachers too is, you are just as capable of serving as a Secretary of Education as anyone else, and or president. But I hear you, and that's why, Devin, we dedicate our lives to this profession. It's the best profession. I thank you for your passion. Thank you for that moment of vulnerability, man. It keeps me going, that's for sure.
Yeah. Do you have time for one more question? I know your schedule is a bit tight, but this is kind of one. So I interact with a lot of teachers, and the veteran teachers seem to feel left behind. When a lot of these funds are coming to these districts, it seems to be going towards boosting and luring in new teachers, but leaving behind the veteran teachers, shortening their pay, giving them more responsibilities, and kind of easing the new teachers into it. It seems almost like a bait and switch that they're getting, and they feel like they're being forgotten. How do you address the veteran teachers that are concerned that they're just not wanted anymore?
Well, that's the furthest from the truth. Let me tell you, as a former principal, if I were a principal right now, I would be sitting with my veteran educators and saying, how do we get through this? Who better than them to help guide where we're going, given their experience and their ability to take a new teacher under their wing, or to make sure that the building is focusing on the things that they need to focus on, right? If anything, I think we're fortunate when we take advantage of what they bring to the table, and their different perspectives. So my suggestion is to, and I certainly will be aware of it when we're communicating, when I'm visiting these districts, when we're talking about ARP implementation, get teacher voice in the room when we're talking about how to reimagine education. That's where our veteran teachers are going to shine. They know better than most what our students need moving forward. And then a shameless little plug, if I could. Sure. For those veteran teachers that are still paying for loans, go to public service, look for public service loan forgiveness, studentaid.gov. There are benefits available for veteran teachers that have been paying student loans for 10 years, have been teaching over 10 years. Your loans should be forgiven. So go to studentaid.gov. We want to make sure that between now and October 31st, we've widened we've casted a wider net to make sure that people who thought that we were paying into that system are being included, because there's some people were told they were, but they really weren't. We want to make sure that they're taken advantage of. And this means our veteran teachers are eligible for more loan forgiveness. That's one way we can thank you. But at the end of the day, we're not going to get through this pandemic, nor are we going to reimagine education without the voice of our veteran teachers.
Right. Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate your time and obviously your support for teachers. And we hope that there's, good things on the horizon. And can't thank you enough for getting down there, battling for us down in the trenches. And hopefully, better days are ahead.
Our teachers are worth it. Better days are ahead. Thanks, Devin.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Have a great day.
You too.